Welcome, people of the World Wide Web. So it's Chris from Cypher Sigma Screen Time here, and it is the weekend. So as the weekend always goes, we have movie review time. So you would have already known from the thumbnail, it is the Smasher Machine. So yes, this is the new Dwayne Johnson kind of autobiography style movie of the UFC fighter Mark Kerr. It is 2 hours and 3 minutes long. So we have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in the main role as Mark Kerr, Emily Blunt playing Dawn Staples, essentially his girlfriend throughout the story, Ryan Bader as Mark Coleman, a kind of colleague and coach of Mark Kerr's or The Rock, Baz Rutten, who plays his The Rock's trainer or Mark Kerr's trainer. It is actually the person's trainer in real life, obviously playing a 25-year-old younger version of himself. And then obviously the film is brought to us by Benny Safdie, which part of the Safdie kind of, I think it's brothers, who used to direct a lot. Obviously he did Uncut Gems, and obviously this is, I think, his first solo kind of directorial debut. So what is the movie about? If you do not know, this basically covers 1997 to 2000 in what was essentially UFC, or the start and creation of UFC, preliminary based, I think, in Japan or China. I can't remember which one it is. And obviously it's all about the story of Mark Kerr, him having kind of him starting his league, getting defeated, and trying to have a comeback. I thought the movie was all right. I will get more into that afterwards, but we'll put up a spoiler warning and we shall get into the movie. So yes, as this movie starts, the first section of the scene is shot in a very kind of old 80s, 90s format. You have Mark Kerr basically being interviewed, talking about himself, and then coming down to have his basically opening kind of fight in this Ultimate Fighting world before the octagon. So these are just, and then he has his fights and he does well, and then he wins this belt. It then kind of camera switches to a kind of more modern day version, and then you kind of get to see him progress. Obviously this is 1997, these fights on, it's kind of like one day, or it doesn't really specify, and then we time skip to 1999. This is where you get to meet more of Mark Kerr character. He has a fight, he unfortunately loses it. It is a little weird that he's in obviously China or Asia, wherever he is. They're going over these new rules. He goes into this fight. The person looks blatantly that he disobeys the rules. The ref doesn't say anything. Kind of The Rock gets knocked out, or the Mark Kerr character gets out. He's very angry. He goes away. Kind of says to like the people, like, the rule is, with my head's down, you can't knee me in the head. And this bloke did it multiple times, and the ref didn't say anything, which I was like, that is very strange. So anyway, he kind of starts to recover, speaks to his friends and coach, Mark Coleman. And then you find out, obviously, that the judges have decided it's a no contest. It's kind of like it didn't happen. He's kind of all friendly with his rival that comes in and stuff, but you can see there's a little bit of hostility between him and his girlfriend, when she first turned up. This then kind of sets him down a spiral. You find out he's got a drug addiction. You have a few instances, it seems, these Emily Blunt character and The Rock, very volatile relationship, and obviously stuff like this ends up, Mark Kerr's character ends up getting hospitalized because of his drug overdose, and then he has to go into rehab. This is where Mark Coleman kind of flies across the country to him, kind of says, you're right. He goes into rehab, comes out of rehab, and kind of he has this new focus on it. During this, Mark Coleman kind of starts to go on kind of a return to form because he's getting quite old. And he then starts to win matches, starts to become popular. The Rock obviously returns, kind of gets rid of Emily Blunt's character for a period, and then there's this kind of like Ultimate Fighting Championship tournament that's going ahead. All these people will go to it, and then obviously it's like there's a first tournament and there's a second tournament, which is a bit strange. It's over 2 days, and then you have like, I think it's like 8 people make it through the first day, and then the second day, the 8 people magically going to go to a final. But it's all kind of blurred a little bit over. It's very quickly done. So it's kind of building that The Rock will retrain for this with Mark Coleman. They possibly will go to, because they're friends, they're going to maybe meet up in the final. Rock's doing quite well with his training and his rehab because he hasn't got the Emily Blunt character, and she then comes back into it. It's a little bit volatile leading up to just before this. The Emily Blunt character tries to shoot herself. The Rock kind of intervenes, and then he goes into his final fight. And during his final fight or the qualifier, he wins the first round, and then on the second day when they have kind of like the finals, he just kind of freezes in the ring, and then gets defeated. Mark Coleman, his friend, goes on to win. Hooray, he gets a lot of money and stuff like this. And then kind of we have a scene of Mark just doing the shopping. In modern day 2025, it then has a little bit of like he used to fight until 2009. La 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 la. He got married to his girlfriend, came back, they got married, they were together for 6 years, has a son. That's it, the end. So what did I think of this movie? So I rate this movie 5.2. Not to say it is lackluster. For me, this comes from a documentary, The Smashing Machine. I think it's in the early 2000s about this person, and I get that maybe that documentary or the document of this character and the drug overdose and stuff he went through was very interesting at this time. For me, I was a little confused of how this documentary then got made into a movie, because for me, Mark Coleman is more the character I want to focus on. Like, he has had drug problems like Mark Kerr in his own life. He went through, he had one wife with two girls in this one, and then he has a new partner with a new daughter now, but he goes on to win it. And I kind of felt like the story should have been more him, and Mark Coleman's character should have been front and center rather than Mark Kerr's. Because when you even read into it, like obviously they mention that these are linked to UFC and they're prolific fighters, but if you go into like Wikipedia and stuff and you read through UFC, there is no mention of Mark Kerr really anywhere. Mark Coleman does get mentioned in the odd occasion, because he's done stuff. Obviously, he was a champion and stuff like this. But I'm a bit like, because of how the story is paced, and obviously you see him rise to fame, and then like 2 or 3 years are skipped over where there's no montages, no nothing like this. You don't really get to link with the characters. Then you just find he's a drug addict. He goes into rehab, he comes out, and then he just, his girlfriend slash wife is just such a chaotic thing. You just don't want to be, Emily Blunt did a brilliant job, because I absolutely hated the character she was portraying. I was like, why you'd even want this person in your life, specifically when you do what you do. She is comes across as very manipulative. Now, obviously, this is film, and I don't know how much has been changed or altered, or if it was even true. But it is what it is. But it's essentially you kind of have this story. He was quite good. He got into drugs. He got out of drugs, and then didn't do that well, and then kind of won a few more fights, and then dives off into like the infinity world that is celebrities and sports and everything else, and that he hasn't really got much of a connection to anything. And I was just like, it's like the story isn't exceptional in my eyes the way it is portrayed here. I'm not sure how this was more than what the documentary should. The documentary is probably very interesting and probably is the right platform for this. I don't think this should have been made into a film, but it has been. It is what it is. As I say, Emily Blunt really good. Really hate that character all the way throughout it, so she obviously did a very good job. The Rock, he wasn't too bad. Probably the best credit for this movie is the prosthetics team. The prosthetics team and how the 3-4 hours that The Rock went through, like when he goes into it, that if you've seen The Rock and know him, like he's quite a big guy anyway. He has a lot of tattoos. Obviously, they put prosthetics all over his face. His tattoos are all gone. There's stuff like this, and you look at it and you could kind of see and hear The Rock a little bit in it. But apart from that, you couldn't tell this is makeup and prosthetics and everything else. It looks genuine. So I have to give it that. And I think there is like an award-winning Japanese prosthetics person that did it. So hats off, that. And that's probably why it's a little bit higher than 2, because the prosthetics seem the greatness. But I say, watching the movie from start to finish, it's for the character, there's no kind of redeeming effect. Yes, they got over alcohol addiction. You don't have much of a tie of seeing where that addiction came from. You don't get much of an idea of him fighting. You just have first one day he fights all these fights or something at the very beginning and he does well. He then gets beat. He then wins his next match and then loses the next one. And it's just like, but his life's a little haphazard, all that stuff. And I don't know. It just doesn't draw me in to say, wow, this is an amazing movie. As I say, I think it's one person. If you had Mark Cole's characters front and center, and The Rock as Mark Kerr, and kind of what these two did and went through, and there, because obviously it's funny that they have a big friendship and all this stuff like this, and then if you read online now, they're no longer friends. So what has happened there? But anyway, that has been the Smasher Machine. Did it smash? More like the Crasher Machine in my eyes, but hey ho. If you've seen this movie, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Otherwise, I shall see you in the next one.